Hi, I'm Cullen.
And I'm Susie, and this is Caring Out Loud, a podcast made by carers for carers. Cullen, do you want to tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, sure. I work for Derbyshire Carers as a carer support worker. A brief background would be, as a teenager, I was introduced to care, helping look after my granddad, and then at 21, I became a care worker. And at 25, I started working, 26-ish, I started working here, just to give you a wee background as to my understanding of care. Do you want to tell us a bit about who you are, Susie, and how you're connected to this?
Well, I've recently discovered that I'm a carer. My husband has early onset Alzheimer's disease, and I just thought I was just his wife, but no, I'm a carer, and I'm happy to be called a carer now. Okay, maybe you already get support as a carer. Maybe you've only just stumbled across the term carer, like me, for the first time. Or maybe you're just looking for a place to hear other people's stories and feel a little bit less alone.
Each week, we're going to chat about different sides of caring, things like how it affects your mental and physical health, understanding your rights at work or in healthcare settings, how to get a break or some respite, and loads of other subjects. We'll also be sharing real experiences, tips and advice from carers themselves and the services and staff that support them.
But we're now going to start right at the beginning, and we're going back to basics, what it actually means to be a carer.
So we spoke to carers across Derbyshire and our staff at Derbyshire Carers Association. We also spoke to Universal Services for Carers, who are the city's carer support service, that's Derby City, to find out what or who a carer is.
I think it's quite difficult to sort of put it in a box as such. For me now, it's people caring for a loved one in whatever capacity that is. It could be the partner, it could be the siblings, it could be neighbours or anyone really, to help them to keep daily life going. So that could be from a physical point of view, of getting around the house, making dinners, could be from the sort of paperwork side of it, and all the sort of things that come into it, such as like the banking and the paying the bills, the emotional side of it. It's a really complex one.
I see it as someone who has responsibilities for somebody else to help with social health, caring needs of that person, whatever that is.
Care for someone you love in every aspect. It is in every aspect for me. I manage everything. I mean, I do have some support. Very, very hard. It's changed my life completely. I've forgotten who I am. It's affected my mental health. I would do it all over again, I really would. But the saddest part for me is losing the mum that I can remember now.
My caring role is slightly different in as much as it's not from a physical point of view. It's my son's got mental health issues, and so it was that started me off on the caring side of things. It just changes, it evolves.
I think that everybody's a carer at some level. You're a carer when you become a parent, and it carries on, then you become probably a carer for your parents or elderly people or even your next door neighbours. So everybody's got an element of caring. It's only when I think that it's close to home that you actually start to appreciate that you are a carer. And that's hard to recognise. I didn't recognise it at first, and other people I've spoke to don't recognise it, but when it's someone close to you, you do it because that's what you expect to do. People don't actually think of themselves as being a carer until it's pointed out to me. I certainly didn't, really.
Oh, it means so many things. And in my experience, people don't always know they're caring, and that role creeps up on people slowly. And it might start with just filling in a form or anticipating a need, or, not even related to a specific diagnosis. And that can be for anybody, a family member, it could be for a neighbour, it could be for your spouse or your child. So what we find is that, people don't identify as carers. They support and they care, and they love. Sometimes it's done out of duty as well, you know, depending on the relationship they have with the person that they're supporting. But it can be from the smallest kind of weekly tasks that they're doing to then, 24 hours. And that can come into somebody's life at a drop of a hat, that role, or it can develop over time. So it's a big job, and it is a job. And people don't always see that.
What did you think, Susie?
I think Emma nailed it, the last one. She nailed it, because that's exactly my experience. I never saw myself as a carer, but some of the things, like taking phone calls for him, doing more driving. I mean, all that, I suppose, I didn't realise, but that's me being, caring. But, as my husband's progressing, I'm doing more for him now. He still does the banking, he still does, he can still drive, he can still do a lot of stuff for himself, but I see myself as his wing woman. I'm there backing him up if he needs help. So what do you think?
I thought the series of people all saying about what they thought about carers, for me, to my ear, it was like a crescendo where it was covering itself and building, and then that last statement from Emma was so true, in my opinion. Maybe not everyone wants to put the label of a job on it, but like you mentioned earlier, that kind of what I imagined it was going to be, now it's revealing to me all of these bits that I never imagined. And I think that was the music underneath Emma's statement, why we thought it was so good.
I thought caring was taking care of their needs, like if they're bedridden or if they really can't remember stuff. I thought, that's coming. I thought I will be a carer, I will be my husband's carer. But it's been kind of brought home to me that I've been his carer all along, and that I'm picking up the bits that he's dropping. I'm picking those up. So yeah, that's the carer side for me. Yeah, and that's what Emma kind of summed up perfectly. Slowly, you find you're doing more for them. And whether you don't realise it and you don't realise you're a carer, that you actually are caring for them. Earlier in the month, we sat down with Tina Monroe, hospital liaison worker. Tina's worked for Derbyshire Carers Association and supported carers for 7 years. We asked Tina what a carer is.
We obviously support people who are young carers to young adult carers and then to actual adult carers as well. We look at carers, and they're people that provide unpaid support for a loved one, whether it be husband, wife, grandparent, friend, niece, nephew, things like that. So I sort of have the definition of a carer, and I can go, yes, I think you are a carer, but actually we also know that carers take 2 years to self-identify. So you saying, I'm not a carer, I don't see myself as a carer myself, it's quite a common thing to do. But to me, you are a carer though. But if you don't want that label, that's fine. We can work with you and support you. We can do. But it is a very emotional and a very personal label to take.
To dive a little deeper, we sat down with Hazel, who cares for her husband, to hear about her experience. So, Hazel, how did caring all start for you? Where did it begin?
I think I could say it was quite gradual. With my husband as well, we both resisted that role, him being cared for and me being a carer. He's in the early stages of dementia, and so there are not a lot of problems really for me.
And Hazel, can you tell us more about your husband?
He was a maths teacher, and he plays piano a lot. He can still do maths questions. He reads, and physically things aren't so good these days, but we still go for strolls and walks and things like that. Oh, we dance as well. We do folk dancing and ballroom dancing twice a week. So in that regard, there's not a huge difference. I'm sure some other people will have very different stories. So I still have a lot of freedom. I have really worried about being able to cope. I have a fear of being trapped, but that's not happened yet, and it doesn't feel as though it will happen because there are other forms of support.
Where did your caring start?
It was very gradual. To start with, I noticed differences. His memory wasn't so good. He eventually sought medical help, and he was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, which recognises that people can still carry on doing the things they've always done, but they do have a memory problem. That condition can lead to dementia, but not necessarily. In Stuart's case, it did. I could see his memory getting worse. So again, he had an assessment at the beginning of this year after consulting with the doctors last year in the summer. So it took a long while to come through, but that assessment happened at the beginning of the year and it was found that he does have dementia. The intellect is absolutely all there. There's no problem in thinking. We still have discussions of various sorts, political discussions, what's happening with current affairs and, well, everything. But his memory, he might not be able to remember what he did this morning or what he did yesterday.
So, Hazel, how have you been throughout the diagnosis and what was it like afterwards?
Surprised, really, at being able to cope in the way that I do. It is scary what might happen in the future, but I was scared of being in this position. So, it should be all right. And I have outlets, the dancing we go to, creative makers, I go to something else called Common Threads, plus I have a small network of very good friends. I am surprised at how well I am coping, but it doesn't feel as though I need to cope. To start with, it was very frustrating, I still get angry at times for things that Stuart has done. Well, not angry, but more frustrated, I think. And it's remembering that he didn't mean to do that, and that's getting easier. Yeah, and I suppose another aspect of being able to cope is that, I can get, I'm not a very patient person in some respects, but actually I am becoming quite patient with these incidents and, okay, it's happened, just move on. It can be really stressful, not stressful necessarily, actually hard, difficult to have to take on responsibilities for that person. So I go to appointments with Stuart. I've had to do that for a couple of years now because otherwise he will be saying the wrong information and then receive the right information because he wouldn't remember what was said. Having to take the responsibility of saying we need to call the doctor, we need medical advice, because there's also the forgetting of what his conditions are, which are now multifaceted, really.
For those listening who might be carers or struggling today, what would be your advice?
I think access everything you want. There's a lot of support out there, and I've been impressed with Derbyshire Carers at the contact I had with them, thinking I need to recognise myself as a carer and have some support. And they put on a variety of things. And of course there's always the peer support that can be accessed as a consequence of taking part in some activities. So access everything you can.
Well, a lot of that rang true of me because I think her husband is like mine, still can do a lot for himself. And she said about the freedom that she still has, but the fear of feeling trapped. That's very real for me. And the other thing that she said that kind of hit me was that she got angry and then she said no, frustrated when he does something wrong. And I think with me, again, it's sometimes he'll do something and you think, why the hell have you done that? Why, and then you kind of bring yourself back and think he's not doing it on purpose, it's not deliberate. And then the next time he does it, it's easier to deal with because you kind of know it's coming. But it's always the first one. It's a little bit of a slap, I don't know what you thought about any of that.
In my head, I'll say, because we've been learning and getting to know each other, I was imagining you were going to relate to bits of that. Yeah. And the reason I had that feeling, I think, is because in this kind of a context, early stages of dementia to be specific, that is the kind of thing I would hear as a carer support worker. And the feelings of being trapped, the natural worries we'd have, thinking about the future really isn't easy, especially when you know there's little to no chance of improvement. With something like dementia, it's defined as palliative for that reason, and that's such a hard conversation to have. And it's not just a conversation, it's coming to terms, and these things have to be spoken about many times.
Today is the first time I've heard my husband's condition referred to as palliative. And I suppose I do know that it's going to be the end of him. I suppose I know that. But I never thought of it as being palliative. Palliative is what my sister had in the last stages of cancer when she was going somewhere to die. And that's been a bit of a blow for me, hearing, dementia as palliative.
The terminology is maybe not helpful when we know these things. They don't need that name. I think things like worrying about the future are so natural, because actually what that says to me personally is worry is like, how do I find ways of coping? How do we find ways of it not becoming like the future's so scary, now we want to look away from it? Because as hard as those conversations are, by engaging, like we're hearing from Hazel, it led to her creating artwork. It led to her finding out things that were really important. And maybe the music between that is that maybe, like you might be looking for, Susie, someone that mirrors us in a way that's not the doctor, that's just like us as a carer, and that can have such a value to that future thing.
Because I say this thing, you've heard me say it hundreds of times, we're not dead and we're not gaga yet. We're still at the party and we're dancing. I'm not thinking about the hangover. I'm not, but it's there, it's coming. I do know it's coming, and because we've been hitting our bucket list. We've been doing stuff, and we've just come back from Egypt, and some things happened in Egypt that, for the first time, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, am I pushing him too hard? I'm doing this for me. My memories, I want us to do stuff. We're at the party, we're dancing, but actually, am I pushing him too fast? Should I be doing this? Should I be sort of letting him just go the way he's going? Or do I just keep dragging him out and saying, we're not dead, we're not gaga, we're living life? I don't know. Coming back from my holiday, I'm in a bit of a state of a whirl, actually. I don't really know.
It's maybe put you back in that I'm not sure, and I don't know whether anyone really knows. You are the expert on your partner, and therefore getting advice is valuable, but maybe because you've had such a experience of going away, maybe it's just about reframing it. Maybe it's not, now we can't do that. Maybe there's a version of it to keep that conversation open. A huge thank you to Hazel for sitting down with us and having a chat about her experience as a carer.
Now we've looked at adult carers, I was also surprised to find out that there are young carers too. We sat down with Kira, who is the lead for Young Carers Service for Derbyshire and has supported young carers for the last 17 years. Kira, do you mind telling us who you are and what you do?
So I am the service lead for Derbyshire Young Carers Service, and we support young carers across the county who are aged 5 to 17 and a half years old.
Sorry, did you say age 5?
Yes.
How does that work?
So if you imagine you've got a family and they've got, for example, 2 children, and one of the children has cerebral palsy, and then they have another child. That child is then impacted by having a disabled sibling. So their needs come secondary to their sibling. So they may have come home from school with a reading book they need to read, but mum and dad might sit down with them to sit and read it, but then all of a sudden their sibling needs them. So then they have to step away. So that child has to deal with those emotions and the impact. There's also the example of mental health, or any family member could have a long-term health need. So that's when that child then has to step in and do some support, keeping an eye on someone, checking they're okay, getting up in the night, having their sleep disturbed. They may share a room with their sibling who's got autism, who doesn't sleep very well, so their sleep's disturbed. So it's that impact that we look at that age, rather than what you'd imagine a carer to be doing, like pushing a wheelchair or, that physical sign of caring. It's that impact.
So I suppose they don't even know they're carers. They're just impacted by the whole scenario.
Yeah.
And
that's something that we look into when we do an assessment and start support, is quite a lot of them go, well, I don't know any different. Am I a carer? They don't see themselves as a carer. And I think it can be linked in with adult carers as well, where it's like, well, I made my vows to my wife or my husband in sickness and in health. I'm just doing what any spouse would do. And that's sometimes what children see themselves as, and also families see them as that too. Like, oh, they're just being a sibling, they're just helping. And then we come in and go, well, actually, and it's sometimes recognised when they're in schools. They may be struggling, they may be tired, they may be coming into school late because they've had to take a sibling to school, or they may not have time to do homework. So that's when triggers start, you're putting it all together and thinking, what's going on for this child?
And what sort of help do you give them?
Each child gets an individual style of support. It's based on their needs. So we see the child separate to their family so they can get their voice across. And in this assessment, we're looking at the impact of their caring on them, and also looking at what they do to help. And we're looking at, do they access anything outside of the home? So for some people, their life might be school and home. Other children might have the opportunity to go swimming lessons, brownies, scouts. So we're trying to fill those gaps and fill those voids in their childhood to make sure that they get equal chances as other children as well. So we offer one-to-one support to look at coping strategies to make their caring a little bit easier. And then we offer the chance to meet other young carers as well via group work and school holiday activities as well.
Because I was asking you about, age 5,
Yes.
because that was, quite amazing to me. But I suppose it's also to 17, and they're not children, they're classed as young adults, aren't they? Yeah.
So then at 17 and a half, they would then transfer across to the Young Adult Carer Service, where they're then supported until they're 25 years old. So a caring role can look very differently from when they're 5 to 17 and a half.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, because I suppose when they're very young, you're just dipping in and out.
Yeah.
But then as they get older and they're more aware of their feelings, so they need you more.
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit more intensive as well, because we've got more to work with. So if you were to say doing a support session on worries with a 6-year-old, their worries would be age appropriate. So it might be, I'm scared of the dark, I'm scared of something under my bed. Whereas you ask those set of questions to a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, it's like, it's reality kind of kicks in. I'm worried about, will I get this condition? Is somebody going to die? It goes with them.
That hadn't even occurred.
Yeah, it evolves with them as they get older. So it's adapting all the way through to meet their needs.
So if someone's listening to this and they want support, whatever age, parents for their child, or a child wanting to know, what do they do? Where do they go?
So all they need to do is look on our website, and then there's a tab on it that says make a referral. Fill in a really simple form with basic details about the young carer and who they care for. It takes 5 minutes, send it through, and then we can take it from there.
And if someone's listening and they're not from Derbyshire, where would they go?
So you just need to Google their local service. So each council has a duty of care to provide a local service to young carers. So it might be in-house, it might be provided by the council, or they might have a charity-led service like ourselves.
That was Kira, lead for Young Service Carers for Derbyshire, talking about the experience of young carers. Thanks ever so much for listening to our first ever episode of Caring Out Loud, a podcast made by carers for carers. We really do hope that this has helped you understand what we mean when we say carer.
This is the first of many episodes, and in the next we'll be looking at how carers can get the right support for them.
Don't forget, we have lots of information in the text that goes alongside this episode, including links to support services and where to find more information. Thanks for listening. I'm Susie.
And I'm Cullen.